President Ghani and First Lady Rula Ghani, welcome to the program. You know, it's rare to see the first couple speak at the same time, and I wondered whether you had a message this new year, particularly with the incoming administration in the United States.
Well, first of all, a very happy new year. Our deepest sympathies on the losses from Corona, our gratitude for the sacrifice of the American servicemen and women, 2,448 of whom have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Our thanks to over 1 million American men and women in uniform who've served in our country. I look to a world that would be healed, that would become whole, that our partnership will be strengthened and based on mutual interest, mutual respect, and mutual trust. And I trust that we will be able to attain peace in Afghanistan and hopefully stability in the region.
All I would like to say is that COVID has taught us humility. We find out that no matter who we are, we're not in control of our lives. And we need always to adapt. So that's the lesson I get from last year.
Well, let's address all those issues. First, I want to ask you both, because I think it matters to you both as representatives of all the Afghan people. What is the latest in the peace talks, the so-called peace process that the United States has backed and initiated between your government and the Taliban forces?
Well, first of all, the beginning is important because after nearly 20 years of conflict, we are beginning to speak. The process has been slow because over 4 months were spent just dealing with procedure. But this second round's message is, can we agree on the goal that the international community in the region has agreed with us, namely a sovereign, democratic, united Afghanistan at peace with itself in the region? If that goal becomes accepted, then we can move forward. But if the objective of the Taliban is to dominate and give us the peace of the grave, then that will have very negative consequences. Our society is united in seeking peace, but we want to have a positive peace.
Yeah, I would like to mention that when the peace talks started in Doha, we always heard that it would be at the cost of the rights of the women. And what was really very interesting and very warming for me is that the women did not lie down and accept it. They did stand up and made their voices heard. And through several interventions, they showed a lot of political maturity, and they were able to insert themselves, or at least to be part of the process, fully part of the process. Not only do they speak for themselves now, but they speak for the whole country and for the whole people of Afghanistan. So this is a positive aspect of what has happened.
I want to play a little bit of an interview that I conducted with the commissioner of your Civil Rights Commission a few months ago as some of these talks were underway. You're absolutely right. The fact that several women have been sat across the table from the Taliban who never recognized that women actually had the rights to be out of their home is pretty dramatic. This is what Gaisu Yari told me about her and other women's concerns.
One point that is very important for the international community to focus is that we are not ready to give up. We are not ready to lose the achievements that we have had in the past almost 20 years now. So yes, we do want peace in the country, but are we going to, with the price of losing women's rights or the achievements we have had in the past 2 decades?
I want to ask you, because you've spoken about how the Taliban actually talks about women when they think they're not being listened to in public. Do they really respect? Are you confident that even if a peace deal is signed that respects the gains women have made, respects what your constitution provides for women's rights, that if the Taliban's involved, those will be respected?
Let me answer it in a different way. The Taliban are our brothers and our sisters. And as Afghans, they have the right to come and live in Afghanistan. And actually, quite a few of them do. Here, the question is whether or not they should bring with them their own way of thinking and impose it on the rest of the population. And they can, if they have political ambitions, they can do it through the electoral process.
Mr. President, you have been, at the forefront of the post-Taliban Afghanistan since the fall back in 2001. You served under the previous president, and now you yourself are president. What do you think? What is your gut telling you about whether you can, or this longest of American wars can end in any way that actually guarantees the rights of all your people and that ends the violence?
Well, we are in an open moment. The incoming Biden administration is an immense opportunity to work with us, to define what U.S. security interests in Afghanistan and the region are. No one wants a return to a heavy footprint. Second, an agreement on the future stability of Afghanistan, guaranteed both by the region and by the international community, is essential to end 40 years of conflict. Third, I have been leading the peace process. I've owned it. I secured the first ceasefire in 2018 in our history. The process must now be truly owned by the Afghan government and the Afghan people. Fourth, the scale and scope of U.S. presence in Afghanistan needs to be defined. Here, the most critical issue is how to marry a condition-based approach with a time-based approach. My basic goal is to be able to hand power through the will of the people to my elected successor. This is crucial to enable us to both honor the sacrifice of our civilians, our activists, and others. One thing needs to be clear. Afghan society is not willing to go back, and we are not a type of society that the Taliban type approach of the past can be imposed on us. That was the piece of the graveyard. We want a positive peace where all of us together overcome our past, embrace each other, and together rebuild in Afghanistan that can be what I call a roundabout, where all civilizations, all people, all activities can interact.
I hear you saying we don't want a heavy footprint forever, but I wonder what you feel about first President Trump calling for the reduction by half of American forces there, and secondly, Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden, who is also not a massive interventionist, to say the least. I just want to play a little bit of an interview that he gave to CBS a year ago. This was before he won the nomination, obviously before his election. But this is what he was talking about a year ago.
Do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility. Mm-hmm. The responsibility I have is to protect America's national self-interest and not put our women and men in harm's way to try to solve every single problem in the world by use of force. That's my responsibility as president, and that's what I'll do as president.
I agree with President-elect Biden that his responsibility is protection of American people. You know, since I've been president, the number of Americans, this is since 2015, that have lost their lives is 98. While we, the Afghan people, have lost over 40,000 civilians and military. We are in the front line of your security. The key issue is not charity for us or responsibility. We would be grateful for the United States for what it's done with us. The question now is, what is the threat of terrorism? Is it a system or is it individuals? That is where our common interest is. And it's on that basis that we move forward in terms of blood, the sacrifice has been reduced very substantially this year. The question is not endless wars, because Afghanistan is not a civil war. The question is whether there are endless threats to our current global order and how Afghanistan fits within that. We are assuming responsibility for our future. So if the United States would like to withdraw, all we ask for is a process that is predictable, that is mutually agreed. I had the honor, as you mentioned, of leading the transition process where over 100,000 American troops during 4 years left Afghanistan. General Petraeus was commanding 150,000 troops. Now we're reaching about 2,500 troops by 15. So it has come down. President-elect Biden must make his decision, and then together we will forge a pathway to make sure our mutual interests are ensured.
I want to ask you, Madam First Lady, because you have spoken in other forums about the effect and the presence of international forces and international NGOs, non-governmental aid agencies. If you were to put on your role, your hat as a former journalist, how would you assess what's happened in your country with all this outside intervention? On balance, what does it look like today?
Basically what I have been talking about is that the NGO model is not a sustainable one, because it's a cyclical model, and at the end of every cycle, the NGO people have to go around with their begging bowl and ask for more funds. I much prefer that they would become local associations that rely on the population of Afghanistan. They still can receive funds from abroad, but they should be accountable to the people they're supposed to be serving.
What are your fears for COVID in Afghanistan? And now that vaccines are coming out, do you believe that countries like yours will benefit from that?
Well, first of all, I think Afghanistan showed that despite our small and limited resources, we could predict accurately the onslaught of COVID. We categorized it in 5 phases: awareness, diffusion, adversity, relief, and recovery. The first wave, we took very strong measures, and our casualties were minimal, and equally the disruption to the economy was handled because, thank God, agriculture. The second wave, again, just in the last week, is going down. Our fear is of a third wave. We've managed the first 2, I think, remarkably well, mostly because of our population configuration. Fully 70.6% of the Afghans are under 30 years old. So the youth give us that, and also collective immunity. The third wave that is now started from the UK is the focus of our attention. On vaccines, we are hopeful. The first wave, the first assist batch that will come to cover 20% has been agreed.
Mm-hmm. I want to turn finally to you, First Lady. Your husband mentioned that his goal is to transition peacefully to whoever is his elected successor. When you see the hullabaloo that's going on in the United States right now, with the current president not transitioning peacefully and putting up a huge amount of obstacles to the duly elected president-elect, what message does that send to Afghanistan and to other countries in your neighborhood?
Well, I suppose we're finding out that America is not very different from our countries, and that maybe the efforts that we are doing here in Afghanistan to install a solid republic, a solid constitution, and a system that allows a voice for everyone with respect, mutual respect and trust, is something that will be durable and probably might be an example for other countries. I still hope, and I can already see, I still hope that the systems that are existing in the United States are protecting the Republic in the United States and are allowing that whatever disruption has happened during the past few years will be just that, and that there will be a return to normal.
On that note, First Lady Rula Ghani, President Ashraf Ghani, thank you so much for joining me from the Presidential Palace in Kabul.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you.